I am just thrilled to have with me today Patrick Ghielmetti, who is one of our certified delivery experts. And I know you're based in the US, Patrick, but you also spend time in the motherland, correct? Which is?
I do indeed, George. I was born and raised in Switzerland. I'm an American citizen as well.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, I pretty much exclusively lived in the US. I still do, but post-COVID, I have decided to spend more time in my home country, which is Switzerland, about 4 months or 3 months out of the year. Yes,
A
that's
wonderful
what I'm
place
right
to
now.
be able to be.
It's a great place. It's summertime. It's beautiful. So I'm very happy to be here right now. Yes.
So how long ago were you introduced to behavior styles about?
Longer than you care to know. I would think it's about 8 years ago since I've established my own business, most likely 2016, something like this, I would imagine.
And
Yeah.
you were at Four Seasons at the time when you came upon this.
I just exited I think you're right. I still was my company of choice for many, many, many years. I was with Four Seasons for 22 years. And then I ultimately founded my own company and became an independent consultant. That's what I've been doing. But you're correct. I graduated when I was still with Four Seasons. You're correct.
And you were in hospitality. You've been in hospitality for a long time in your life, correct?
I knew in my hearts of hearts that I will be having a career in hospitality when I was 7. I declared it to my parents when I was 7. And of course, everybody laughed, except the persuader knows.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I was deep on the inside. I knew that's going to happen. And I declared a fellow hotelier when I was 7 years young that I would, in fact, manage a hotel. And I made good on that commitment. It took me about 33 years, but I made good on that commitment. Yes, I'm a hospitality professional at heart.
Mm-hmm. And Four Seasons obviously is definitely not your neighborhood drop-in kind of place. Very much a high-end experience there. So you've had a lot of experience in some very nice properties around the world.
I sure did. As I said, it was my company of choice for 22 years. I had 3 careers with them. I was a hotelier managing hotels, multiple hotels. I then shifted into the domain of human resources, or people and culture, as it's called today, and ultimately shifted in the domain of transformational leadership work. So yes, I had a beautiful career with that company.
So I'd love to know what was it about behavior styles that caught your imagination or your attention enough to where you became certified and you've taken it all around the world. What was it about that content that really sparked for you?
It was interesting. It was a gentleman from the outside who I tremendously respect, who suggested that I should get certified in that work. I didn't know much about it. I knew about DISC. I knew that yours is based on DISC, but I didn't know much about it. And this gentleman suggested I should get certified in that work. And it was a game changer. It really was, because I so experienced, if I can call it, humanity in their different manifestations surrounding behavior, that it made such a big impact to me. And then I saw immediately the potential that it has to use this in the corporate world and to work with teams. And it became my bread and butter for the last 8 years.
And you have done this. One of the things I want to talk about with you today is that you've done this all around the world, many different places, I know anyway. What are some of the places, just briefly, that you can quickly tell us where you've delivered behavior styles to a group?
You're right. I've been incredibly fortunate. I think I counted. I think I've done this work in 55 countries.
Wow, my goodness.
That includes North America and the Americas. That includes Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and that includes Asia. You know, a couple places, Hawaii, my own hometown, Chicago, West Coast, East Coast, Europe, in many cities, in the Middle East, in many cities, Asia. I have taken this work to Bhutan, a very, very remote place that not a lot of people have the opportunity to go. I probably couldn't have afforded going there, but it was a hotel company that hired me to do work there, and I brought that work to Bhutan. That was an experience that I will never forget. I was in other countries in Asia, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, Hong Kong. Go on. Bhutan was a very, very special place that I will not forget. The Maldives, beautiful Maldives.
Oh yeah.
Bhutan was very special because there was such a hunger for learning. They
Mm.
want, it was this give me more. And it was this hunger. And when I took that work to Bhutan, it was a game changer for, I think, for me personally, as well, for many people who took that work on.
Wow. I would love to hear about obviously taking behavior styles around the world. You had some kind of confidence, obviously, that this content would be relevant wherever you went.
Yes.
And yet also we know different cultures engage and have different norms which impact how they learn and how they incorporate and how they need to hear things. Would you be willing to share with us a little bit about some insights you've had about behavior styles in different cultures you've been in?
You know, I think my biggest discovery is that absolutely there are cultural differences and cultural intricacies in so many ways, and they are to be respected. At the same time, humans are human.
Right.
Whether that is in Hawaii, in Chicago, in Kuwait, or in Bhutan, humans are human. And interesting, you know, the module that you teach,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I would find controllers and persuaders and stabilizers and analyzers in all these cultures. The answer is yes. So, and you know, somebody told me, oh, you're going to China, they must have a lot of red. There must be a lot of controls.
Right.
Sometimes that is true, but I have seen Chinese cities where there was a lot of green, the exact opposite. And whilst culturally, red may have been very present, individually in that room, green were the majority.
Right.
So I just find it quite interesting. And you know, you taught me at some point, George, be careful with the labeling.
Right. Yes.
Sometimes we box and put people in a corner. We say a general manager, oh, he must be a controller, or a sales and marketing person, oh, he must be a persuader, or an HR person, oh, he or she must be a stabilizer, or a finance person must be an accountant. That rings true very often. And at times it doesn't ring true at all. I have the belief that the same applies to culture. Could we say Switzerland,
Sure. Yep.
my own home country, or China is primarily more a red culture than others? I would say that probably rings true. But I would also say be very, very, very careful with the labelizing, because at times it's the exact opposite of what normally may ring true.
Thank you for sharing that. That confirms definitely what I have learned over the years and seen. As you mentioned, there are cultures like organizations and global cultures and even regions of cultures will sometimes value maybe a couple styles more than others. They'll become kind of more the norms of the culture, but it doesn't mean that all the styles aren't there in the people of that place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very often, as I said, China, very often I see green heavily represented in China.
Yeah.
Very often I go to other countries where you would expect green not to be as prevalent, and it's very green. So be careful with the labeling. You taught me that once in terms of positions in corporations. In my seeing over the last 8 years specifically, the same thing applies for cultures. You know, you could say China so red. You could say Italy so yellow. You could say Thailand so green, and you could say another culture so good. But I have become very, very almost resistant to believing this. And I go with an open mind and see in every place that I go what is present here. And that's where I need to play into without having preconceived notions what is cultural.
I'm really glad to hear that, because as you know, we definitely always push against the whole boxing people in and labeling them. Same with cultures as well too. As you affirm too, there certainly are going to be sometimes some preferences or some tendencies that might show up in certain cultures. I can think about my trips to Asian workplaces and seeing how they engaged with they expressed their style preferences perhaps a little bit differently than other cultures did, but they were still there. And yet at the same time, like you said, all of them are present, because at the end of the day, it really is about, you have to get tasks done sometimes more quickly, sometimes take more time, sometimes you're more reserved, sometimes you're more expressive. That's true for all of us situationally, right? So That's the beautiful thing about the model, I think, is it does apply universally too. And that's been your experience
Yeah.
too.
And then we are shifting, as you taught me, then
Yeah.
we're shifting based on situation and environment, right?
Yep.
I know
Correct.
what my preference is, but I can easily shift into other territories. I can easily shift into my domain, which is a 0. I have a fat 0 in blue, in analyzing.
Yep.
There are times where the job or the situation or the environment absolutely requires me to be in that space. And I have developed a skill to be in that space. And I think I've become quite proficient in it. It will cost me energy every single time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's that connection with energy we talk about too, right? And it's definitely something we feel viscerally.
Yes.
The activity where we try to have people act like the style they're not, and with someone for a minute, and how exhausting so many people feel that comes back to that part of, yes, there is a preference, but we can still do it when we need to, at least to some degree.
And we might be quite good at it. It has nothing to do with skill and ability. Nothing. It has everything to do with choice to step into this domain. And the price to pay is called energy loss.
It's wonderful to be able to talk with you, Patrick, because your international experience and also the knowledge you have of this content. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I look forward to hearing more stories at some point in time about your amazing adventures you have. And by the way, before we end up, I'd like to ask you, what was it about Bhutan that was so memorable for you, if you would mind sharing that with us? Because I could tell when you talked about that it was very meaningful for you.
It is a country that is not very accessible to most of us Westerners. It's a country of exceptional physical beauty and cultural riches. It is a country that probably most people didn't have the luxury from an education point of view to experience what you and I experienced. And there is this hunger. Teach me, not from a place of I know better, but from a place of you were fortunate and had some experience that I didn't have. Teach me. And to play into this sense of wonder and curiosity, as I said, not from a place of I know better, but from a place I was fortunate and I have something to give you. And from that place of giving, then to receive so much gratitude in return is an experience that I will never forget. Does this explain a bit? That's what occurred for me in Bhutan. That doesn't make it more special than others' experience, but it was a very, very special moment in time. And for me to have had the privilege to be in that country, not just as a tourist, but as a facilitator of that work, is something that I will remain humble about for the entire my life. And it also has formed me to a certain degree.
Thank you. That's beautiful. I can resonate with that, with some of my experiences I've had with groups where I have just felt so incredibly honored. I've always feel honored, but sometimes it does something happens. It's really just very powerful and almost transcendent for my own experience. So
beautiful. I love that you used the word transcendence. For me, I'm going to the same space. Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you again so much for your time, Patrick. Great to see you. So I
Thank you for having me, George. Thank you so very much.
Be well.